Who are the top 5 outside free agents that fit the Bucs the best? That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this WTSP Thursday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at EKlosky We are your credentialed members of the media covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, you can check out everything that Evan is doing over on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. And you can catch the show every Monday through Friday along with the Everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. Evan, on this episode, we are not talking about how terrible Illinois' basketball team is as much as you may wanted to.
We can spend some time on it if you want.
No, that's okay.
Hold on. Should I do the podcast? Let me get upside down here for a second. Let me start doing it from.
Was that not like the craziest omen of all time? But shout out Terrence Shannon Jr. for turning that into an epic T-shirt and making some big money off of a big mistake. But we are talking free agents in this episode, and you have compiled your list of the top 5 free agents that you think are the best fit for the Buccaneers. You've scoured all the tape. You've watched every snap of every game since I told you to do this yesterday. And so painstaking hours have been put in. For the sake of this exercise, these have to be outside signings. So guys like Chris Godwin, Levante David, Ben Bredesen, they don't count. Obviously, those guys fit, and we would all love to see them back, but for the purpose of this exercise, they're disqualified. But these guys you're talking about, they're going to come from other teams. The Bucs are not going to get all 5. So viewers, listeners, don't be like, hey, Evan, they only got one of those 5. I guess you were wrong. No, these are just 5 players that you guys need to keep your eye on when free agency begins because of the fit. So let's start.
And I will say, I didn't do this so much as a prediction of what will happen. It's just kind of the rankings of how I would attack free agency one after the other, sort of a top of the wish list moving on down. So if we were kind of doing what could happen, then I would be like that Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme where you got the yarn going in a million different directions, because it'd have to be, if this happened there, then that would lead to that. And this, we'll have a lot of those discussions closer to March and really into the draft when things start to shape themselves out. But surely in March, we'll get the ball rolling there.
Yeah, I can just see you with like the crooked tie and then spinning around in your chair going like this, like Charlie does in that. But yeah, let's go ahead and start with your top free agent fit for the Bucs. Kind of talk about what he would bring, why he fits so well, maybe what the cost is going to be, but who is the top of that wish list for you in free agency this year?
Name me someone who hasn't had his stock rise considerably the most from the previous season to the next, and Zack Baun, linebacker.
Okay.
Philadelphia Eagles. Do I think that the Eagles are going to let him go? Probably not, but the Eagles are swimming in a lot of money, and they just found Zack Baun for, something ridiculously cheap. And credit to Vic Fangio. I mean, this guy was supposed to be a special teams ace. And he took the job from Devin White and away he went. First team All-Pro. So what I like the most about Zack Baun, despite the 150 some odd tackles and all the amazing things he did in some of the biggest games you could possibly play in, he doesn't have a lot of miles on him. He is while he's in his mid to late 20, what is he, 28? 28 years old. He'll turn 29 in December. But, when he played for the Saints, he wasn't really run too much into the ground there. And he really found an opportunity in this Vic Fangio defense to sing. And in doing so, man, he would fit perfectly with what Todd Bowles wants to do. Again, is it maybe something that is going to be available to them? I don't know. But if you can get me Zack Baun and the price tag I'll get for you in a second, just based on Spot Track. But I mean, what more could you want from a dude, especially for a defense that just isn't quite as good as it needs to be? And then also understanding that you need to pass the torch at some point from Lavonte David, and Zack Baun would be a tremendous guy who would be here for a while, not just a one-year type of thing. That guy you're moving into the future with him and should be able to be the bridge from Lavonte to what's next.
Yeah, and that's something that I talked about earlier this week, was the whole passing the torch. Kyle Krabs did a mock draft where he had Jahad Campbell being the pick at 19 for the Buccaneers, and he said that that's what he's trying to speak into existence, is a guy that can come in and now take over for Lavonte at the middle of that defense. So that's something that Bucs fans need to be looking for, and it doesn't necessarily need to be in the draft. I brought up Bobby Wagner before, but that's a rental. That's not your long-term solution. This, he's going to play about as long as Lavonte is. So bringing in a guy like Zack Baun, especially coming off of the Super Bowl, would be a huge get for the Buccaneers. I just don't know if they would be able to afford it. That dude's going to get so much money.
Well, and that's the tough part because Spot Track has him right now at $10 million per year. Linebacker position is not as sexy of a position in the free agent market, and obviously Spot Track's building in all the years previously before his breakout. But yeah, I would imagine you don't typically want to spend that much money on off-ball linebackers inside linebackers, and what that, I mean, just going off his figure, I mean, what is he going to cost? Like, 2 for 20, 3 for 40, something like that. It's not going to be like this crazy outrageous number, but for his position, it will be a little bit more the top of the heap. So that's definitely worth considering. And, just for comparison's sake, Spot Trek has Lavonte David at 6'7". So, and we'll talk about somebody else here in a minute. But that's the tough part about this process, is because you have to really weigh what you have and what's coming in. And, if the team were to trade for Trey Hendrickson, well, I probably wouldn't advocate for Baun, because you're going to have to spend a lot of money on Trey, and then you might not want to double down at the inside linebacker position and try to find a stopgap, or rely on someone in the draft along with Servassier. Hopefully Lavonte comes back. That's what I mean about the yarn going in a million different directions. There's a lot of what if statements, but man, I think Zack Baun is he would be a home run addition, and certainly brings a little bit more of that championship pedigree to the Buccaneers locker room. He would fit right in with that culture they built.
Yeah, it's the constant domino effect where, I talk about it with the mock drafts, saying, this mock draft has the Bucs going with this position, but if they address that in free agency, it's going to change here in 3 weeks. So we are going to get to your next 2 free agents on your list. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is the message from our sponsor, Inuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only on iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every day. The new Locked On NFL is here, and it's 2 shows every day. You got the madman Tyler Rowland kicking off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then you can stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make it your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. All right, so we had Zack Baun, linebacker from Philadelphia, at the top of your list. Not always going to get what's at the top of your list. So who's kind of your number 2 in line here? Your silver medal free agent signing for the Bucs this offseason?
Dre Greenlaw. So I'm sticking with the same position. I obviously think linebacker is a great spot where you don't blow a lot of your money on the position, but it's still extremely important. And, Greenlaw does have injury concerns, right? Obviously, the terrible injury that happened in a Super Bowl a couple of years ago, barely played last year, even though he came back healthy, from the Achilles. He only played 3 games in 2021, but when this dude is healthy and able to be out there, there's not a lot better than him. And so right now, Spotrac kind of has him at like 6.7, right? $6.7 million, pretty much Levante. And if you can get him in a fully healthy season, he's a beast. So again, his history speaks for itself. It's a little bit of a risk there with the injuries. Maybe you're only signing him for 2 years, whatever it might be. But that, again, it's a clear focus of mine to bring in someone at that linebacker position to, let's say Levante comes back, pair up with him, and allow the Charvarius and whoever might come in as well to be the depth that you need at the position who could step up in case of an injury. So that was the one, I don't want to say Achilles heel. That's a little bit too much in the nose. But that was the one issue with the Buccaneers last season, not having enough depth at that inside linebacker spot. So if they can do that, if you can bring in, a Baun, who I think is a long-term answer, or even a Dre, who is long-term, but maybe not the contract length that you would give Zach, I still think that that provides you a solid foundation entering the season. Some, 2 really, really good linebackers there, again, assuming Levante comes back, with also some really good depth behind them. And you save a little bit of Charvarius, who has injury issues. And you hopefully can pair up a bunch of these guys who have injury histories, and you can compile one season from maybe one of them that makes it to the finish line, along with Levante, who, knock on wood, has had continued health in his career.
Yeah, and Greenlaw's a guy I've talked about a couple of times. I do really like him. And, I mean, before the injury, we're talking back-to-back 120-plus tackle seasons. And you're right. I mean, maybe maybe they just do like a 1-year prove it deal since he didn't get to play a lot last year. Maybe it's a 3-year deal, but they got the out built in after year 1 where it has very little to no dead money. That really makes a lot of sense. Greenlaw's a guy that I would absolutely love. And I think not to say that I wouldn't love Baun, but I would love Greenlaw because the potential of the production matches the cost of what they can probably afford. So that's a great one. I really like that a lot. But who's we have your gold medal, we have your silver medal, both linebackers, both on the defensive side of the ball. I'm assuming number 3 isn't going to be a linebacker, but I'm guessing you're probably going to stay on defense. But who is your number 3 Bucs
third linebacker? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
This one's a little bit on
they need them.
This one's on the outside, but I am sticking with defense, and it is going to be Josh Sweat, $18.8 million according to Spot Track. And if the Bucs can't get Trey, they can't get Micah, if they can't get all the big names we've talked about already, then they gotta add via free agency. And I understand the concerns out there of maybe him not being a number 1 alpha type of dude, but I also believe him and Yaya together, that is really a great product versus just putting him on an island and saying, can Josh Sweat cause havoc? The whole thing is right now, I think if you tried to attack Josh Sweat one-on-one and you play the same sort of games that you played with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka or even like an Anthony Nelson or whatever that might be, what their current options are, well, I think you're still going to get the same effect that Josh had in Philly. And we're talking 6, 7.5, 11, 6.5, 8. Like those are pretty significant. I know they're not like 17, but go look at what the Bucs have been doing the past few years, and you'll see that like Vita Vea is the man that's trying to get all the sacks for the team, right? He would still soak up the gravity on the outside. I still think that you would probably see, assuming that he's healthy, you would probably see somewhere in the range of 6 to 10 sacks from Josh Sweat. I also think that he would significantly help Yaya Diaby and get a little pressure off of him. So I think you would see Yaya's numbers go up. So while the 18.5, let's say the 19 million per year is a scary number to get to the Florida State product, he does provide that focus on the edge that the Buccaneers desperately need. And if they're put in a position where they can't get the alpha dog, the top guy on the trade market, I think Josh Sweat would be my preferred route on the edge because, and we can go through the draft stuff when we get closer to April, and that's a whole different discussion. But, man, I would sleep easier at night knowing that I got this guy coming to town, again, coming off a Super Bowl. He gets it. He knows how to win, and I really think that he can do some special things with Todd Bowles.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, one of your other kind of running themes here, he is a longer-term solution. He'll be entering his age 28 season, but he's one of the younger guys available at edge rusher in the free agent market. I swear, seeing that Chase Young is just about to turn 26, I thought he had been in the league since 2006. It feels like he's been there forever. I don't understand how he's not even 26 years old yet, but most of these guys are early 30s. So, Sweat's a guy that could be around for a long time. You're investing a lot in the short term and the long term, but you're making him kind of a building block piece for the next 5 years. So it's a high risk, high reward situation for sure. And we're going to get to your next couple of free agent fits here in just a second, but I don't know. I get the feeling that we're going to go all defense here on this list, but let's go ahead and round out the Klosky 5. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I've missed my chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. The Boston Celtics are the favorites to win the NBA Finals at plus 175, followed by the Oklahoma City Thunder at plus 200, and then the Cleveland Cavaliers at plus 900. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP Thursday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast, we have the Klosky 5 free agent fits for the Bucs. 3 down, 2 to go. We've had 2 linebackers. We've had an edge rusher. What else do you have for us here on this this top 5 dream list here as we head into free agency?
Let's say all those guys are big misses. A guy that I've always loved. Every time the Bucs have played him, he's locked him down in his position. Charvarius Ward is a dude who, if Todd Bowles really wants to get back to what he says, he would like to play man and pin his earbacks and do a bunch of things. I think Ward would be spectacular. I think he is really, really special. And it's interesting to me, you pair him up with Zion McCollum, and I'm going to assume for now that Jamel won't be here. You could possibly, if this move happens, maybe you avoid it. Maybe, you get him to move on. But I think that Ward and Zion on the edges, you still have to build depth. No question about it. Still need to go to the draft and probably get a couple of cornerbacks, to be honest. But as we know that the Buccaneers are super thin in the secondary, mostly at cornerback. I think they can probably handle nickel and safety. I think they're probably pretty good there. They can add one more guy into the mix. But to me, entering the season, if you had Ward and McCollum, first off, McCollum and Dean on paper are great too. But you just can't, you can't trust Dean with the injury issues. And, there's just like other teams have had injury fatigue, the Buccaneers have that for Dean as well. So it's kind of this catch-22. It's of how much you love Jamel when he's on the field, but it's just really tough for him to stay on the field. And I think this would be a pretty good way to enter the season, have your corners solidified, and really start then investing in the draft, building the depth pieces. And, maybe you can bring back like a Bryce Hall as a fifth guy. You can bring in some other guys who might be able to fill out that depth for a really cheap amount. But yeah, even if you get Ward, I'm not saying that you wouldn't still draft a cornerback with the first pick if that's the way that the board shook out. So I've always loved him. I think he would be a great addition, but obviously a lot of people will feel the same way about all the guys that I mentioned up to this point.
Yeah, and again, another guy that I have brought up on this show. So I love that we're kind of thinking along the same lines here. But the concern that I have about Ward is the age. Like, I just got done talking about Rasul Douglas on yesterday's show and talking about how, that's a guy that's going to cost around $11 million, maybe a little bit more. that's not really a long-term guy. Charvarius Ward is going to be even more expensive, and he's less than a year younger than Douglas is. So would you see Ward as just being a 2-3 year guy before we're probably going to end up seeing a pretty steep decline in his ability?
Yeah, I would probably lean towards a 3, I would ideally like a 2-year deal. I imagine if the market dictates he's going to get 3 years, that might be the tipping point. Maybe you can structure that third year in a way where you can easily get out of it. Maybe it's a little bit of a 2+1 sort of situation. But, you're kind of looking at 3 for 45. That's sort of the range that I'm seeing. 2, if you were going to go 2 for something in the mid-30s, maybe. But, again, you have to factor in that Dean's falling off the books in this scenario. You're not going to have Ward, Dean, and McCollum. And I know that Dean you can't completely wipe away, but you can save money in that regard so that at least this year it's mitigated because you already are dumping that money into a guy of Dean's quality anyway. So you're really potentially signing him for really just 1 or 2 more years. I think that I could be okay with that.
All right, fair enough. I was just kind of curious as to how you would view overall the signing of that. All right,
you can't just lock into that third year. There's got to be a little bit of an exit strategy, right? So
right,
yeah.
All right, 4 down. All have been on the defensive side. We've had 2 linebackers, an edge rusher, and a corner. Are we sticking with defense, or are you going to sprinkle in some offensive love here? Who's your final player of the top 5 best fits?
It's all defense. The one veteran guy at wide receiver who can play like maybe the Sterling Shepard role of a dude who's looking like he's on his way out and can maybe have some productivity in the type of offense that Grizzard's going to run. This isn't my number 5, but Robert Woods would be someone that I would throw out there. Not going to be super expensive. And he's been in this style of offense before. So I think it'd be an easy transition. That day one would not be seeing the field, but if injuries happen, you know that you got a guy who knows where to be, will be a pro's pro, and you can probably trust him. So that's I just want to throw an offensive guy that I just to prove to you that I did some research in this and that I did look at offensive guys.
An honorable mention.
Correct. I just want to prove that I didn't say defense only and gave up in the assignment. But here's a kind of a controversial one, a debatable one, but just because of his injury history. So Marcus Davenport you could probably get him for $2.5 million. He played, I think, 1 week for the Lions, and that was the end of that. When he is on the field, he is special. He is rarely on the field. But if you can get him for 2.5, what risk are you really taking for a guy who I don't think that you're relying on him too much? You don't have to enter, let's say we all believe that the Buccaneers are going to, let's say they go the route where they don't spend on a big pass rusher. They don't trade for a pass rusher. They go through the draft. And let's say Mike Green falls into their lap, right? Or it's somebody else. Day one, it's going to be a tough assignment to say, go be the lead dude. But maybe you can split him with Marcus Davenport. You can manage Davenport snaps. Say that, hey, entering the year, we're going to try to reduce your workload so that you can get through the entire season and mix him in with a rook. And again, he's a veteran presence, been around the block, obviously knows the division very well. So and I think he's still got juice in the tank. his pressure rate stuff, to me, I mean, it looks good. He's a freak of nature. When you look at him, when he steps onto the field, it's just he's got to stay there. So if a lot of things don't fall Tampa Bay's way in free agency, the trade market, it's maybe a guy you got to take a stab on. I'm not saying that I wouldn't be on here complaining about how the Bucs didn't address the edge rushing position well enough. I would be on here saying that. But if it gets to that point, he's sort of your high risk, or he's your high reward, low risk, considering the money you'd have to put into him. And take a shot. A lot of other people out there have kind of like Chase Young is sort of that take the risk on him move. But, Davenport certainly has a lot to prove. He can still make himself some money if he can just have a full season. So he can come to Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers would tell him, you're gonna play a bunch. For us, we'll manage your workload as well. But you're going to be a key part of this operation. We'll just make sure that we mix in all these other pieces as well.
Yeah, 6 sacks in 13 games played in 2019, 9 sacks in 11 games played in 2021. But then the last 2 years, 2 sacks in 4 games played, half a sack in 2 games played. So, yeah, I mean, again, when you're only investing $2.5 million, I mean, all right. What if
throw
you
throw incentives? Give them incentives. Yeah. Hey, you're gonna get 5 sacks, 8 sacks, 10 sacks, whatever. The higher you go, the more successful we are. We'll pay that.
Right.
So that again, just wanted to throw a little bit of an option that maybe not many people have talked about, but something where I can certainly talk myself into it if it gets down to that point.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. All right, Evan, what do we have going on over at 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app?
Hit up all of that, what you just said, because we are entering spring. We are in spring training right now. So the Rays will play at Steinbrenner Field for the first time against the Yankees on Friday. So that will be cool. We finally get some baseball games to watch. And then, of course, we have a packed month of March. March Madness will be on 10 Tampa Bay, but also we got the Valspar Championship. We got the St. Pete Grand Prix. There's a lot of things coming down the chute on top of opening day at the end of that month that we are really going to pick up some steam, as well as the second half of the NHL season starting. We resume action with the Lightning on Sunday, and they're a team that also we got plenty of trade scenarios to talk to, as we aren't too far away from that trade deadline.
Yep. You got to love that. Excited for the Lightning to get back on the ice, especially with the way Gensel's playing in this Four Nations thing. Loving that. Hoping he comes away with the MVP and USA beats Canada again, because who doesn't want to beat Canada? That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs. Please check out everything that Evan is doing on 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at eCloskey WTSP. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. And of course, make sure that you are following on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.